None of us like to admit when we're wrong, least of all when it's in an area that we're passionate about or consider ourselves an expert in. Today I'm going to be telling you the one thing that I feel that I've got wrong in the last year or so when it comes to nutrition. My name is Sam Gerlin. I'm the founder of Gerlin Nutrition. I'm a fully qualified nutritionist and I'm an online health, fitness and nutrition coach. And today, as I say, I'm going to be telling you the one thing that I feel I've got wrong about nutrition. And that one thing is calorie counting. Now, if you've watched some of my previous videos, you'll know that I'm a big advocate for intuitive eating and a sustainable approach to nutrition. But today I'm going to be telling you why I think that calorie counting might be the difference between you getting to where you want to be with your health and fitness goals and not. So without any further ado, let's get straight into this. I'm going to grab my trusty laptop, as always. We've been through many a video just like this together. So I'm going to get straight into this today, starting with where my root criticisms of calorie counting lie. But first, let's define what a calorie is. Because a calorie is a unit of energy that is determined by the energy required to warm up 1 kilogram of water from 0 to 1 degree Celsius. Okay, the way that we measure how many calories are in the foods we eat is using a device called a bomb calorimeter. Believe it or not, it's not an actual bomb, but what we do is that we place a food item in a container, surround it by water and heat it up. And that's how we determine exactly how many calories are in the foods we eat. Now, just to let you in on how many calories are in each of our macronutrients, so protein, fats and carbohydrates, we have 9 calories in our fats, 4 calories in our carbohydrates, 4 calories in our proteins. And if you're interested, there are 7 calories in alcohol, each gram of alcohol, that is. Okay, so with those baseline facts established, let me tell you where my root criticisms of calorie counting come from. The first being that we often use, these outdated, inaccurate energy estimates, okay? These Atwater factors, which is what those units are called, that I've just mentioned there at the start, are not accounting for, individual variability, both in the foods that we eat and in the way that we digest foods. Okay, so that's going to be different from me to you. That's going to be different based on what we ate in our previous meal, how much water we've drunk that day, what we got up to the night before, how many hours we've slept, what our stress levels are saying. Okay, it's also going to be different depending on how we process and cook the food. How old is that food? Is it 2 days old? Is it 1 day old? Have we blanched it? Have we boiled it? Have we grilled it? Have we baked it? Have we air fried it? All these factors play a role in determining how many calories are in the foods we eat. So for example, if you take a piece of, let's use broccoli. No, that's a really poor example because you can't eat broccoli raw. Let's take celery, for example. Now, a piece of celery that you eat raw has got far less calories in it than if you were to cook that celery. Okay? Now, that's all got to do with the food processing and how that impacts the amount of calories that we eat. Okay, so what this means for calorie counting in general is that it can make tracking particularly difficult and inaccurate, especially over the course of time. Okay, so that's the first sort of criticism that I've always had of calorie counting. We also tend to focus on the numbers or the quantity of food we eat as opposed to the quality. Okay, taking, ultra-processed foods, for example, which can be manufactured to contain less calories, less sugar than something like an apple, for example. So let's take item A, which may be some sort of highly processed granola bar containing lots of artificial ingredients, but minimal calories. And then an apple, for example, which is nice and high in fibre, a lot more satiating. Combine it with some nuts as well when you're going to add to that fibrous nature, add in some healthy fats. It's going to take longer to digest, okay? So focusing on food quantity over food quality is another criticism that I've always had of calorie counting. Okay, Those are certainly the two biggest criticisms that I've had, but also the fact that it can be very monotonous, very repetitive, and I think this is ultimately the thing that causes people to fall off of calorie counting. Okay, so having really done a deep dive into this area in the last few days and weeks, I've uncovered some studies. I'll leave them on screen so you can go and check them out for yourself if you'd like, but they're all randomized control trials, so they're all gold standard studies that pull the data together, and they suggest that calorie counting works. Okay, it doesn't not work, but it's the time scale that it works on that is the issue. Okay, so for example, there was one study that looked at a control group against a calorie counting group, and over the course of 3 months, there was a significant difference between the group that calorie counted in the weight that they lost and the control group who were not calorie counting. Okay, but across 12 months, the group that had originally, lost the weight, calorie counting, did not experience any significant differences another 9 months down the line. So after 12 months, the two groups were the same. So that suggests that there's something about calorie counting that in the long run isn't sustainable and it isn't enjoyable. Okay, we've all been there. Okay, we've all weighed out our food, counted every last calorie. It's time consuming, it's boring, it's monotonous, it takes away the enjoyment of the foods that we eat. So that is a big criticism of calorie counting. Okay, but that isn't to say that it doesn't work, because after 3 months, it did. And this is where my point is today, and this is where I think I've gone wrong with calorie counting personally. Now, I should refer back to a principle that I use on my program and within my philosophy here at Go to Nutrition. It's a principle that I use with all of my clients, and it comes under this whole bracket that I have of sustainability, because ultimately the most the best approach for you is going to be the one that you can sustain in the long run. That's what all the data suggests in any nutrition study. What you can remain consistent with, what works for you, is going to be the best approach, the best diet, the best plan for you. Okay, so under my bracket of sustainability, I have a pillar, or I have a bracket, a bucket, that I refer to as centrality. Now, I've spoken about this in previous videos, comparing things like the vegan diet against the carnivore diet, which are both very polarizing topics, and people tend to sort of, sway to one side or the other. And often the answer lies somewhere in the middle. And I think this is very much the same sort of situation. Some people, fall victim to being a calorie counter or being an intuitive eater. This is the two buckets that we find ourselves with. Now, I think that there's somewhere in the middle where both approaches work. So what I suggest, what I propose, and where I think I've gone wrong with calorie counting, is that we need to start using it as a tool as opposed to an actual solution. So what I propose is that calorie counting can be used perhaps at the start of a nutrition plan, at the start of whether it's a weight loss phase, whether it's a muscle gain phase, whether it's a performance related phase where we're looking at specific intakes of carbohydrates or specific protein targets. Okay, it can be used for 3 days, maybe 7 days, maybe 2 weeks if necessary, to really make sure that we're starting on the right foot and understanding what a portion of chicken breast looks like for us. Okay, to hit our 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein per day, if that's our goal. That's the bare minimum that I suggest everyone strives for. If that's our goal, okay, then what does that look like on our plate? Based on, the numbers. Now, of course, there are going to be those nutritional and natural sort of variability in the foods that we eat, the way we digest those foods, what we pair them with. It's all going to have an impact, but it helps us get as close as possible, okay? It just informs the approach rather than playing complete guesswork. Now, I'm not saying that this is a approach that's going to, last a lifetime. It's not, okay? But that is exactly my point. Do it for a few days, do it for a couple of weeks, and then go back to intuitive eating with the information that you've gathered, the knowledge that you've gathered by tracking your calories. And then 3 months down the line, or a month down the line, or 6 months down the line, when you feel you're stagnating and you're not seeing any progress again, then you can use that tool of calorie counting. Again, that's the key word here, tool, to dip back in, weigh your food again for 3 days, see where you might be going wrong, because you might realize that, okay, maybe I'm eating more than I realized or less than I realized or whatever it may be. It just informs your approach to, okay, go back in again and start intuitively eating once more with that informed sort of approach once more. So that's my whole sort of revelation that I've had here. You know, this is the paradigm shift that I've experienced in the last few days or so. I've always seen calorie counting as, you know, ultimately a useful strategy, but now I'm actually getting to the point where I'm like, okay, no, this is something that we all need to be implementing, okay, but as a tool and not as a solution. That is the key distinguishment I want to make here. Calorie counting is a tool and not a solution. But it is certainly not useless, which is something that I've called it in the past. And I don't want people to come away from this thinking that, you know, calorie counting is either useless or the answer to everything. The answer, again, lies with that centrality under the sustainability that I've spoken about. But that is my big takeaway. I could delve into more detail here, but I don't think it's wholly necessary because I've got to the conclusion. I've let you know this is my revelation. This is the one thing that I've got wrong about nutrition in the past year or so. I will link those studies in the description down below so you can go and check them out for yourself and know that I'm not bullshitting you basically. This is all coming from the data, the science, randomized control trials, you know, the best in the business, the gold standard of studies, so that, you know, you can utilize this approach now. So when you're going out and entering certain phases or certain blocks of training or whatever it may be for yourself, you can adopt this approach. You can use calorie counting as a tool and then dip back in with your intuitive eating where needed. Combine the two, find that central midpoint, find the balance, and you'll be good to go. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, comment, and subscribe, because you know I'll be bringing out 2 to 3 YouTube videos every single week now. So yeah, if there's any reason to subscribe, let that be it. I'm trying to bring the value. If there's anything that you particularly want to see, let me know in the comments section down below. But other than that, once more, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about my services and my program, the Nutritional Growth Blueprint, you can check that in the description down below as well. Go and drop me a message over on Instagram if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the services. But other than that, I'll see you all in the next one on the other side in a bit.